If you've been struggling with weight gain, sluggishness, or changing metabolism, I have a free gift for you that is going to be a game changer. I want to offer you my free, no excuses, light and easy lunch guide to boost midlife metabolism. Inside this ebook, you'll not only get tons of simple and doable meal planning how-tos and tips, you'll get my favorite, quick, ridiculously delicious recipes. And you'll also receive my exact 3-step formula to guide your food choices so you'll know exactly what to put on your plate. Boosting your energy and feeling lighter doesn't have to be hard, and I'm going to prove it to you with this free guide. You can get the instant download using the link below. It's only going to be available for a limited time, so be sure to grab it before it goes away. Welcome to Boss Body, the podcast where successful women learn how to lose weight and get healthy in a way they can live forever. If you're successful in so many areas of your life, but can't seem to give yourself the same care and compassion you show everyone else, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sarah Haas, women's weight loss and body love coach, and I'm here to help you create the light, joyful, energetic life you deserve. Hi, everyone. Welcome. You're listening to the Boss Body podcast, and I'm Sarah Haas. And as usual, I'm so happy and honored that you're here. And for those of you who can relate to being a perfectionist, which I am a self-proclaimed perfectionist, yes woman, people pleaser, and I'm always a work in progress. You are going to love our guest. I have Meredith Vaish here with us. She is an intuitive leadership coach, and she teaches women how pleasing, proving, and perfectionism can deplete our energy and undermine leadership because it blocks access to our intuition. And she supports them to uplevel their life, their energy, and their results so they can step into their biggest dreams without draining themselves. That's key, right? So the draining piece is something that a lot of us feel like is necessary for success. The hustle, the grind, the pushing. And in the process, we are perfectionists. We are trying to do all, be all for anyone and everyone because we think that's what it takes. And Meredith, you're here to help us kind of break down that, unravel that, and show us why this is false and how we can really live our best lives, not just in our career, but in our relationships, in our spirituality, with the health of our body, without all this hustle and pushing. So thank you. I'm so happy that you're here.
I am so excited for this conversation. Thank you for having me.
So before we dive in, I know people are on the edge of their seats because they're already resonating with the perfectionism and the pleasing and the pushing and the proving, all of those good things. But you have some personal experience in this area, and I would love to hear your story because I think it's so amazing when we can hear from others who have been through what we have or are currently going through to see how and that we can get to the other side of it.
Yes, and hopefully a little faster than I did.
Right.
My hustle story, I mean, boy, I think I was born a hustler. I was certainly conditioned to be a high achieving, kind of prove your value, prove your worth, make sure everything gets done, never drop a ball. I think we can all relate to that expectation. And but where it really came to a head is I'd say in my 40s, I was well into my career at Stanford University, heading up their communications and marketing. And I had 2 kids at home, so also full-time mom. And I was leading a team. And I just decided to take on this extra project because, we always take on the extra because if you're competent, people give you more things and you think, oh, what a great, what a great sign that is.
And we
So I
have
took on
trouble
this,
saying no.
and we do because we're like, also, we want to make sure that because we really believe, I think one of the things about the pleasers, the provers, and the perfectionists is we really are optimistic. We're like, let's get it done and great things can happen and I'll just add my energy to it, and then we kind of forget ourselves in the process. So there was a big tech project. My background's in technology. I'm out here in Silicon Valley, and I got the sponsorship for it, so it was kind of, my name was sort of written all over it, and it was a really big pricey, high stakes kind of project, and very political, and like lots of stakeholders, et cetera. So my game was like cranked up to the X degree. And they had brought in some consultants, and consultants are fabulous, but what consultants do is they work around the clock, which I don't know how they pull that off, but they were working around the clock. So that meant, right, ergo, I have to work around the clock because I don't want to be a gating factor in
Right. You're
holding people
chained
back.
to your cell phone and your email, and you're constantly getting questions and alerts and new things that you have to address.
There you go. Wow. It's almost like you've been there. Yeah. So a couple months into that project, I was noticing that, I was having some pain in my shoulder and in my arm, and all of a sudden my mousing arm wasn't really working well. And I was just like, it's no big deal. I'll just work through it. How many times do we just forget? Like, it's not a big deal. I'll just keep going and it'll just work itself out. So I was ignoring what my body was telling me. And because I had no recourse. Like, it's not like I was going to step back or slow down. I couldn't figure it out. I just said my only speed was go and go fast. So in the middle of the project, my arm finally did give out. And when I say give out, the whole shoulder and the hand just went floppy. Like, the nerves could not communicate. And it wasn't like a stroke. It's
Oh,
called
wow.
repetitive stress injury.
That's
And
terrifying.
it was really scary because all of a sudden my right hand was just not functional. And so, of course, instead of thinking of going to the doctor, I was like, I have another hand. I'll just do
Wow.
everything with this hand, because that's how committed I was to the delivering of value and the perception of success, and, never letting anybody down. Well, once that happened and the HR department got a hold of it, they were like, Meredith, you have to stop. And I was like, no, 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 no. I don't want to stop. And they're like, no, like, literally, you got to stop. And I just realized how hard it was for me to slow down when so much is riding on something and then I'm not there to personally deliver it. I realized, wow, that really is my pattern. Of course, I didn't realize it at the time. I go to the acupuncturist and she says, okay, why don't you lie down on the table? Acupuncture was a benefit Stanford had. Otherwise I would not have even known that it was an option. And I was like, I was really afraid of the needles at this point because acupuncture, and I was like, ooh, that's going to hurt. She has me lay down, she puts the needles in, and I'm thinking, oh, that's fine. This isn't terrible. Like, I can handle this. And then she says, okay, I'm going to leave you for 20 minutes and then I'll be back. And she turns down the light and turns up the heater. And I'm like sitting there. Of course, you can't move because you've got needles in your back. And it was the first time I had not moved, that I had to be quiet, that I had to be still, that I had to pause, I think, ever in my life. And all of a sudden, just with that little break, the waves of emotion and grief and exhaustion, and I feel like I really had betrayed myself in a really fundamental way. Like, how did I let it get this bad? And how did I do this to myself? And it wasn't in a blame. It was just like, oh, honey, like, how come you didn't think you could take care of yourself? And with that, all the waterworks and the big ugly cry. And I just remember when she came back, she looked at me like, wow, those needles really did something on you. Because I was committed from that moment on. I'm like, something's got to change. I'm not going to live like this, and I don't want other women to live like this. This is not okay. And from there, I I gave my resignation, and I took what I called a soul sabbatical. it was supposed to be a year long where I quote unquote figured out what it was that I wanted to do. And yeah, instead of being as productive as I thought I was going to be, instead I took a ton of naps. I made a lot of soup just to nourish myself. I recorded my dreams in dream journals. I took my dogs on long walks. And what I realized, and I was fascinated with intuition, and all of a sudden, just taking that little break, let all the downloads and all of the desires come through who I really truly wanted to be. And from there, through a series of, fun events, I became a coach.
Wow. So that's a powerful story, especially that all of that came to you in such a brief moment.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was divine intervention that they covered acupuncture and that someone suggested that because that was exactly what was the right thing for you in that moment.
Yeah.
And the point of acupuncture, one of them is to release stuck energy so that it can flow. And energy and emotions are really the same thing.
Yeah.
And you had been pushing them down, ignoring, forcing it away. I'm sure not just physical symptoms, but also emotions that were trying to come
Oh,
up. And so it
oh
was
yeah.
partly the 20 minutes of quiet that you had,
I've
which you
never
never
had.
allowed yourself, and the acupuncture that was helping that energy flow. Because most people, it takes a lot longer to come to that realization.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
kind of lucky that it happened for you all at once and that now, and also that you listened to it,
I
that
think
you
that's it.
paid attention. That's the key is you were able to hear it. It was the right moment for you.
Yeah.
It was a loud and clear message. You have to slow down. This is not serving you. You're throwing your health under the bus, which I see all
All the
the
time.
time
Yeah.
in women. We're such givers and nurturers and people pleasers, and we want to do everything for everyone.
Yep.
And if you do that, you're always saying no to yourself. Every
Yeah.
time you say yes to one thing, you say no to something else. And more often than not, the no is our own self care. We're the
Yes.
last on the list.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that break you took was just absolutely. And it's funny that you say that you weren't as productive as you thought you would be.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience when I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in
Mhm.
2019. And they said you're going to have a year of chemotherapy, so prepare yourself. You're
Wow.
not going to have the energy that you once had. You're going to have to slow down. And that was a message loud and clear in my brain that
Mm.
said, "Oh, okay, this is what you've been needing and now your body's
Yes.
going to force you to do
Force
it."
you. Totally.
And immediately I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do all this inner work. I'm going to read all these self-help books that I've been putting off that are sitting on my shelf. I'm going to learn tai chi. I'm going to start journaling and meditating every day." And I thought that was the right thing to do. So instead of working myself to death and taking care of my family to my detriment, I was gonna throw myself into my own self improvement in the same
Boot camp.
way.
Yeah.
But guess what? It did not happen that way. I had no idea, the exhaustion and the
Yeah.
amount of doing nothing would be required in order for my body
To
to
heal.
heal.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of a
Mm.
parallel.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I can see that in what you're talking about. So the big question is why? Like,
Yeah.
why do we get into this? And it's not necessarily if you're in a corporate career. I see a lot of women who are in the corporate world doing this, also entrepreneurs,
Yep.
moms. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what you're doing. So many of us are pushing and thinking that we have to be perfect all along the way. So
Yeah.
where do we get that? Why do we get into this trap?
Yeah. Yes. So the three energies that I focus on in who I think are the biggest contributors to this forgetting of self and really I call it self-abandonment, because in its essence, we abandon our own and ourselves, and we forget to honor or even listen to our own needs. Like, I don't think we even are aware that we have even needs. A lot of us, we're like, oh, right, what do I want? I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but I know what everyone else wants. So that pleasing and the proving and the perfectionism, the pleasing, I think we all understand really well. And that really has to do with, we are conditioned by our culture to, and especially as women, because just our lineage is that we didn't have our own resources. We didn't even have our own capital, right? We couldn't even own property. We couldn't have credit cards until like the 60s or 70s. So we have always, I feel like the female genetics has been optimized for, if you can please the people around you, that means you have safety and you will survive. So I call pleasing, proving, and perfectionism the survival strategies, because if we do them really well, it means that we're safe. And pleasing for sure is a safety mechanism. Now, the proving is interesting because that really is all around, if you create value, then you will be safe. So if you show that you are worth something, that you can move the needle, and it's very outward, but it has to do with not feeling enough inward. And I would say, if I had to rate of the three, I'm real full tilt in the, I'm not worthy enough, so I have to really achieve in order to compensate for that. And that's why in my background, you'll see, the straight A's and the big brands, and like constantly trying to get value from outside of myself rather than inside. And then the perfectionism, the survival strategy there is, don't make mistakes, because mistakes can cause disconnection. It can cause criticism. And what's interesting about perfectionism is there is a huge inner critic, almost more than an outer critic. So the other two are very outward directed, and the perfectionist is inner directed. I would say healing that perfectionist is one of the hardest, most challenging energies to heal, because we have such a robust critic that is constantly there to tell us how we're not enough or how it could be done better. And what happens with perfectionists is it can then really destroy a lot of your activation. Like, you will start delaying because you're not sure if you have the right approach. There's a one right way. So then there becomes, the mental gymnastics, like, oh, is this the one? Like, you don't trust yourself. So again, all of it is abandonment of your own value, of your own wisdom, of your own worth. And then it gets projected into the world, that the world says, hey, you're really competent. Everyone likes you. You're doing great in your job. You're adding to the bottom line, and you like never make mistakes. Fantastic. You're a winner. And we're over here like, I know, but why can't I even get up in the morning? I'm so tired. Right? Or I'm really pissy, and I'm just, biting the heads off of all of my loved ones. Why? Because you are checked out. You're not in your body. You're not in your soul. You're not in your spirit.
Yeah. And we think what we need in order to be happy is to be safe and to be loved and to feel like we're enough, and for other people to like us, and for other people to say, oh, wow, you've done a great job, and you've been so successful. And then we find, when we are doing all of that and we're getting all that reinforcement that, hey, you're doing the right thing, internally, our intuition is saying, why aren't you happy then? Why do
Right.
you have all this? And yet you still don't feel like you're enough. You still never feel like you get to that perfect spot, because it's impossible. But
Yeah, where is that
in
exactly?
our minds, it's attainable at some point if we could
Yeah,
just get to it. But the bar, once you get to one
just
level,
keeps
the bar
moving.
raises,
It's not
and
interesting.
it's frustrating. And I think it's really on point what you said about the inner critic. And that's
Right.
something I work with my clients on. I actually had another guest on my podcast specifically to talk about soothing the inner
Mm,
critic.
yeah.
And it's that harsh voice. No matter what we do, no matter what we achieve, no matter how hard we work, that voice keeps saying, you didn't do enough. you weren't good enough at it. You shouldn't have made this mistake, or you shouldn't have done this or that, or you should have done more. And you did,
Yes.
it
Oh,
wasn't good
yes.
enough. It should have been better. And it just keeps bringing you down. It's like such an energy zapper.
100%. And I feel like that's why I think both of us work with women in midlife primarily, because those strategies are actually super helpful up until a point. And then they absolutely unravel because you just can't sustain them. And I think I was definitely at that, full-time mom, full-time leader in the team. And then just the pressure of the constant being on and constant delivery and constant overriding of my own needs for others. And then you've got hormone changes and then your body's like, okay, you haven't gotten the clue yet. Let me just really get your attention. And then it'll shut down in some like dramatic way, like you for cancer, me for this burnout. But then again, I also had a breast cancer diagnosis last year. So it really, again, it brought me back to, okay, Meredith, where can you let go of some of that pleasing? Because for me, I was really honing in on the breast as a nurturer, right? That for me, that was the metaphor that I was receiving. And this intuitive thing, like we all have intuition, but if we are constantly suppressing our own voice and our own needs, we can't access the intuition very consistently. So the fun thing is the minute you start saying, okay, I see this pattern, I want it to be different. I actually love the idea of being in alignment with who I truly am, doing the work I'm here to do in the world, to really shine and stand out as the leader that I'm meant to be in whatever cause or impact that I'm here to do. The minute you make that decision, all of a sudden you get very clear on the cost that comes with the pleasing, proving, and perfectionism. And then you start saying, okay, I'm looking for a better way. And there is a better way. And it is through that self-soothing. It is through self-love. And that was even a term I never used. Like if you had asked me about self-love like 2 years ago, I'd be rolling my eyes saying, oh my God, that's like a Hallmark channel,
Right. It's become
romance
cliche.
novel or something. And yet it is essential. So if we don't have the love of our true essence, our true spirit, then we are caught up in all these external pleasing, proving, and perfectionism. And it just, you can do it for a while, but then it just takes its toll. So self-love is the answer, but how do you get there? It's really, really hard, especially for the perfectionists, because nothing's good enough. So I'll love myself when I actually get to the point where I can love myself. It's like, no. What would imperfect love look like right now? Right. And then you just in the moment make some decisions about how to honor yourself, how to listen to yourself. And of course, there's practices and there's a whole, methodology to how do you get more competent at the self-love so that you can grow your success in the world. Because we all want to be successful, but we don't want it at the price that we were raised to offer it at.
Right. And the definition of success often is not what we think it is when we set out to achieve it. It's what society tells us it should be. It's climbing the corporate ladder, or it's being a perfect mom, raising perfect children, keeping a perfect home, having a perfect
Yes.
career, having all the education. And I think it's really, really important what you said about the intuition piece, because when you're pushing and hustling and never slowing down, never allowing emotions to flow, never
Right.
letting the truth come up, never having time to listen to the intuition, you will not be able to step into who you're meant to be versus
Yeah.
who society tells you you should be. And when you're living as someone who you are not, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be unfulfilled. You're going to be grouchy. You're going to, your relationships will suffer.
Yeah.
But if you give yourself that pause like you did and listen, just listen to what comes up, because that's your intuition talking to you, then you can step into your authentic self and to your life's purpose. And that's what gives you energy. That's what gives you joy.
Yes.
That's what gives you excitement. That's where you really shine. And then it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like hustle. It doesn't feel like pushing and grinding. It feels like you're doing something that you enjoy and that you're meant to
You're
do.
meant to do. Yes. I feel like your actions are kind of you're pulled to take action rather than you're forcing action. And that discernment is all the difference. So when you start getting really holding true to this promise of like, how do I honor and listen to what I need and still do hard things? I mean, we're not talking like, there are some people who are like, oh, well, then I'll just sit on the couch and eat bonbons. And I'm like, well, maybe for a day, but then you'll get a little bored. And then you'll be like, what do I really want to do? So when you're in that alignment, like you say, there's a flow to it, and there's the energy's flowing through you, and it doesn't require so much push, and it certainly doesn't require a ton of mental gymnastics. You really get like either a gut yes, you get a some kind of embodied yes when you start thinking about what decisions, what choices. And then the beautiful thing is you don't need all of the medication, quote unquote, right? So using food to numb out, using TV to numb out, using shopping to numb out. Like, you no longer need all the extraneous soothing. You can actually soothe yourself quite simply and fulfillingly without having to go into these external spending money, spending calories, whatever it is.
I
So
like
yeah.
that. I like that analogy of the pushing versus pulling, because that
Mm,
is something you can clearly see in your mind and feel in your body.
yeah.
When you were saying it, I'm imagining a river. So are you
Mm-hmm.
swimming upstream or are you
There you go.
floating along with the
Ooh, with
current?
current.
And it's
Yes.
so much less work to float down than it is to swim and push against the
Hustle your way.
current.
Yeah.
But it can be so hard to tap into that and scary. It's scary to step away from security, from
Mm,
a regular paycheck or a
right.
relationship or whatever that looks like for you, for a change that, maybe you've taken that pause. Maybe something has come up and your intuition is saying this career isn't serving you. This relationship isn't serving you. Then that's the scary part, is how do you take action
Yeah.
on the message that you have received?
Right. And small action, people. Like, I took a big action because it got really bad for me, right? My body was like bleh. So, and funny enough, because I'm a, business person, I was like, I'm going to create the next, billion-dollar company. So my pause that I was taking, it was only called a sabbatical when I looked backward. It was really a time where I was going to, quote, create the next big thing, because in my world, if you create value through money, then you're okay. And it's okay to take time if there's going to be a bottom line associated with it. What I found is there were so many bottom lines. There was a financial bottom line, there was a spiritual bottom line, there was a health bottom line, there was relationship bottom line. Like, if I actually took all the bottom lines into account, I mean, the wealth I got from taking that break from my normal corporate routine was, I mean, it was life changing. But not everybody has to take a break. I highly recommend them, but not all of us are in a position financially or emotionally or physically to do all of that. So there are things you can start incrementally, and it's noticing the pleasing, the proving, and the perfectionism. There's a really specific quality and characteristic to these energies that you can learn and go, oh, I'm being triggered. And not just any trigger, I'm being triggered in this way. Cool. Now I know, what do I do when I'm triggered to prove myself? Well, the opposite of doing is being. Where can I just be still? And it could just be on my drive into work. I don't listen to anything, and I'm just like allowing my thoughts to come. And maybe I have a voice recorder that I can, record some messages that I might receive that way. For the pleasing, the opposite of pleasing is, frankly, really being your own leader. So it's that sovereignty. Where can I create the boundaries? Where can I show leadership for myself as a whole important place to honor? And then for perfectionism, the opposite for perfectionism is really progress, right? Like, can we just take that stuff down a notch and like have that no big deal energy? Like, I'm in process. I'm going to take iterative steps. I'm going to do and learn, do and learn. So these are the way we take energy away from those big, sticky conditioning. And we learn and practice little tiny changes every day in every way that can help us get more capacity for that soulfulness and that intuitiveness. And so we can take leadership in our own lives. And that's what intuitive leadership really is.
I think it's really important what you said about take small steps, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we can look at the big picture and it just becomes overwhelming. And you
Yeah.
think, oh my gosh, I'll never get there. Like, how in the world am I going to walk in and quit this job? Or how am I going to end this relationship? And it really is an incremental process. All the major changes I've ever made in my life, which I did get divorced after 17 years with two kids. And I also left one career to start another.
Yeah.
And both of those are scary, and neither one of them happened overnight.
There you go.
It was, how do you research? How do you can you update your resume? That's one little piece. Or
Mm-hmm.
can you research other careers that you might, or even just like you said, sit down and just listen. That's a
Yeah,
good
I feel
first
like
step.
just backing into even before action. I love action. Imperfect action is one of my favorite things. But dreaming, listening, getting inspired, noticing like, ooh, I'm drawn to this part of the bookstore or this title or these songs. Like, I wonder what that, and just following your own, follow your bliss. There is intelligence in responding to what is pulling you. And that is what's going to feed your transformation ultimately. And we don't have to be scared of finding the right way, because that's perfectionism. We get to just know that the way will be shown, the next step will light up. If you are listening, you will be able to notice and take the action. And if you're not listening, it's okay, it'll show up again in a different way. Like, there is a level of trust also that you want to cultivate in this practice, because intuition is an act of trust. You are sitting back and saying, okay, I'm ready to get the next piece of information to take me on my way. And in the meantime, I'm just going to really love on myself. If I'm getting freaked out, if I'm thinking this is just totally lost, whatever it is, you just be your first soother and you make
And it
it
can be
a-okay.
hard to trust yourself to listen to that intuition, because
Yeah.
it sort of goes against all the things that you've been taught. And if you don't have that self love, that self trust, that self nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
feeling safe with yourself, it can be
Self.
really hard to listen to that intuition. So it's a constant practice. It's something
So
that
true.
they call it a practice because you have to work at it. You have to strengthen that muscle. You have to keep
Yeah.
doing it. It's not like just one day you go, oh, I've decided I'm going to love myself and trust myself and
Right.
listen to my intuition. And here's what it said. And now here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so it's important to know and be gentle with yourself
Yeah.
and not let that inner critic interfere with this process in thinking that you should have gotten from point A to one to
Oh,
point Z
so
faster.
yes. So shoulds are an incredible like indicator that you are in the PPP energy. Like, I should be further along. I should be like her. I should already know. It's like, wait a minute. That's actually not true. Not really. What is true is practice, like you said. And you have to do it badly at first. And that's where the trust is like, even if I show up badly, I'm still showing up. My intention is to show up. And life understands intentions. It absolutely does. And life also understands actions. Those are the two things that I think life rewards you for. If you have intention and you have action, you're going to get results. And then, of course,
Absolutely.
there are ways to facilitate this even more by being around other women who are in that journey, doing it, and all getting insight together. I mean, doing things in community. I think you also have communal like cohorts And
Yes.
nothing is more transformational than being in a group of women all, committed to this work.
Absolutely. Getting support, whether that is through a community or a coach or a professional, all of that is so important when you are trying to change because big
Yeah.
change is hard and we all need help.
Yeah.
And so I love that you are here in this world sharing this gift. And I want to mention that for anyone listening, Meredith has a self love and success quiz that
Yeah.
you can download. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes so that
Perfect.
you can go right there and grab that quiz. It's teaches people about the strategies that high performing women need so that they can consistently create results without the hustle and grind. And if
Right.
people want to know more about you and find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, awesome. I think Facebook's a great place. You can look me up, Meredith Vaish or the Pause Box. Um, LinkedIn, and I think I'm on Instagram at PauseBoxCo. So I mean, I'm everywhere, and feel free to reach out. I would love to, throw over any resource that I have that might help you in the moment. And definitely take the quiz. I find it will give you a score, and that score will be both challenging and probably the best news of your life because you're probably not as far away from your goals as you think. And there's probably really specific pieces that you need to master, and that is doable. So that kind of clarity is worth gold.
Absolutely. And I believe that if that the universe sends you messages
Mhm.
and if you listen and hear the message, you'll be able to take those next steps. So, for anyone listening who is really resonating with the things that we're discussing today, maybe this is your little love tap from your higher power that you should take a first step. And so,
I
I
love
want to
that.
thank you so much for being
Mhm.
here and for everything that you have shared. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I just appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you all for being here. I'm always honored that you allow me into your life and allow me to help you on your journey to overall health. So until next time, I will see you then. Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored that you've chosen to spend your time with me and allowed me to be part of your journey. If you like what you're hearing, remember to subscribe to the podcast and share it with anyone you think would benefit. I'll see you soon.